So I would like to welcome our risk management panel to the stage. They always say that racing is an inherently dangerous business to the racers on the track, but this business can also be very dangerous to the bottom lines of folks in the business as well. Managing risk is a big part of our weekly work before getting ready to put on one heck of a show every weekend. And our panel of experts will help you kick that risk. And Jeff, I owe you like $5 for borrowing your phrase. Our panelists, again, a great group that Tim has put together. And first is Lori Eberhardt, attorney and founder of the Apollo Sports Law Group. And Lori, I'm not sure there's a job in this business that you haven't done along the way. And I really think that helps you connect with your clients better. And I also want to thank you personally for all your hard work that went into the Friends of Laguna Seca group. That's an unbelievable facility, and we need to see that alive and well for many years to come. Darren Hickey on the end is from Indianapolis, calls Indy home, and spent over a decade at Century Insurance before joining Gregory and Appel. Darren's expertise and professionalism has earned him positions within the racing community, including the International Council of Motorsports Science, and ICMS was grateful to them to work with them on sort of a guest exchange this year as well here at RTBC. And Jeff Ladd, finally, the president of Sports Insurance Specialists. When it comes to insurance products in sports, and specifically in motorsports, nobody does it better than Mr. Jeff Ladd at Sports Insurance Specialists. And Jeff, your CAP program, when we talked about that on Race Talk Radio earlier this year, I was really intrigued with what you're doing with CAP. I think it's going to keep racers very safe and also make racers' families very happy that they've got that protection when they go to the track. So again, I'm going to open up with some questions, but already start thinking of questions, and when we open it up to you guys, in a minute, this is a great chance to get your questions answered by the experts in the insurance business. And also, you've seen how much attorneys charge. So we got free questions here from Lori.
The legal advice is worth what you pay for it.
This is very true. I've been told that many times. Well, Lori, it always seems in this industry that people have that, it can't happen to me mentality. What is the number one thing that people in the racing business need to do a better job of so they can protect themselves from lawsuits?
Dennis, it's a great question. And there's actually two things that people can do to protect themselves against lawsuits. And it's interesting because we deal with clients a lot that let's start here. People in racing want to spend money to go fast, right? Racers don't think they're going to be in accidents. They don't think they're going to wreck their car. It's never going to happen to me. If you're on the racetrack side, too. No, my paddock is safe. My wheel fence is the best in the industry. People don't think the accidents happen to them, but they do. And so it's very interesting to me. The one thing that people can do from a speedway side, from a team side, is incorporate. It's really inexpensive to do. You can do it in every state. You file a form with the Secretary of State's office, form a corporation, form a limited liability company, do something to protect yourself from individual risk. If you form your corporation, you personally don't have any liability for any accidents, contractual problems that happen at your facility or that happen with your team. So incorporating is one really simple thing that you can do. I would say go to your local attorney. It's a couple $100 to get it done, but it's a huge amount of protection. We had a case in North Carolina where at a short track, and a driver ran into a racing official. And the racing official was injured and sued everybody. The speedway, the sanctioning body, the team, the owner, everybody. This team owner was a successful business person, had a great concrete business that they ran, but did not incorporate their race team. And it's such a simple thing to do. And a lot of smart people are involved in this industry. So incorporate your business, limited liability company, do it, and keep filing those annual things. The second thing that you can do is talk to an insurance representative. Accidents do happen. Motorsports insurance is surprisingly affordable. A lot of people outside the industry think, well, insurance and racing's got to be so expensive. It's really not. There's measurable risk. It's very affordable, and it's a really smart thing to do with your money. We all want to go fast, but you got to make sure that you're not losing your house if that accident happens at your speedway.
Jeff, same question to you. What's the number one thing that people can do from the insurance side to make sure that they're protected?
Always look at your facility. The nightmare claim is obviously a car in the grandstands or a hood or a wheel or something awful like that. But most claims typically come from small stuff. Bleacher boards, that can be a problem, especially if you live in an area of the country, where winter's pretty harsh. Those boards rot over the winter. It's important to get those changed out when you get into a new season. Lots of trips and falls. Just look at your restrooms, look at your parking lot. Are there holes in the parking lot? Are they getting fixed? That's where the majority of the claims come from. So many facilities have done a lot better job over the last, I've been in the business 25 years. I know in the last 20 years, facilities have come a long way. Guardrail has come a long way. The wheel fences that are erected now, they're doing their job and they're keeping the car on the track. So from that standpoint, that's where I see lots of stuff happening, and it's all positive.
Darren, when I go to a racetrack and I sign my waiver to enter the track, I then think that it's used as a coaster for that guy's coffee back in the pit shack. The way people manage data in this business is horrible. Is that the reason we need to go to electronic waivers to manage our data better?
You're exactly right. We talked about this on our call. We've all been involved in racing a long time, and the standard paper waiver has been around since the dawn of time. I can tell you tons of claims I've been involved with where somebody gets hurt, and the first thing we say is find that waiver. And the track owner, promoter, racing series, you can see the panic on their face because it's like, what folder do we have it in? What box did we stuff it in? Is it in a crate somewhere? And usually the person's in a hurry, so then you're going scanning down, and I know my handwriting's gotten worse over time, and then you're trying to find where did they actually sign it, and is this the person? Technology's advanced. As Jeff said, tracks have come a long way. We need to move the envelope onto electronic waivers, and Lori, chime in from a legal standpoint. And it's not that expensive. I mean, yeah, you can go state-of-the-art system, and I've got some facilities that are spending $30,000 and $40,000 for a system. But I'm aware of systems out there that are almost free that will also capture your image when you sign the waiver and timestamp it and date it, which makes our world so much better than if there is a loss, you can go right back and say, yeah, John, isn't that you? You signed a waiver Friday at 6 p.m., and the data is managed. And then it also provides data to the series and the track about who's attending your event and facility. I think we have to move into the 20th century and do this now. Lori?
Yeah, sure. From a legal perspective, there is a debate right now in our industry, and the insurance companies are debating, well, are electronic waivers, are they enforceable in court? And you don't want to be the racetrack that has an electronic waiver, and you get to court, and the judge says, well, that's not binding, and then you get into your lawsuit. So I think we need to be more progressive. So there's debates. Are they enforceable? Are they not enforceable? We've done the research, and we've looked at it, and electronic contracts are enforceable. You sign them every day. How many times you do an update on your phone? I agree. Are you doing your Microsoft, your new Office 365? I agree. I agree to the terms and conditions. The electronic contracts are enforceable. There's certain procedures you have to go through to make sure you can identify, yes, Jeff used this device, and Jeff signed here, and Greg used his. So there are some things with technology you need to be careful, and there's some processes you need to follow. But we believe that those electronic waivers are enforceable. And the cases that are out there, and law's different in all 50 states. The cases that are out there are very factual, specific with the person, how they entered the data, how they signed the release, and how it happened. So you can have the process set up to be legally enforceable. I think we've got some insurance companies that are willing to say, this is great, because now we have the data, now we've got the information, we know that it's 100%. You're not sending an intern back to the shed to say, go look at the releases and find out where they are, because you all know that's where they are. They're back in some shack. So you've got the data, and it's going to help the insurance companies manage their claims and their losses. So I think the tide is turning, and I think a year from now, I think electronic waivers are going to be well accepted in our industry. And I, for one, running a speedway, I would have electronic waivers that would be at the top of my list as far as the risk management.
And we're going to be talking about the motorsportreg.com later on in the show. But I understand you guys are already working on electronic waivers.
Yeah, Brian Giddinelli from Motorsport Reg. Just a couple of thoughts. I think there was a court case maybe 2 years ago that settled in California that had an electronic waiver, and it was upheld in court. And I think that's when at least some of the insurance companies we work with have become more comfortable with electronic waivers. So we've been working on a program for the last couple of years since that to bring electronic waivers to our product at least. There's a couple of caveats that I'd throw out for people who are thinking about that. One being most of the off-the-shelf services that are available today deal with more transactional things than risk and liability issues. So, for example, if you don't pay your bill for one of these hosted e-waiver systems, 30 days later your data all goes away. Clearly not good for the business that we're in. So retention is obviously very important, and especially so for minors. Minors' retention is to the age of majority plus 7 years typically. So you need to be thinking about 15, 20 years of electronic storage, which sometimes paper is easier in that respect. So the system that we're building, for example, takes those things into account. So I just say that if folks are looking at that, make sure that you take those considerations into account.
And if you're not using Brian's service now to register people ahead of time for your events, you really need to look into it. What a lot of the promoters that are using your service tell me is it's helping them sort of, especially with dirt track racers, it's getting those guys to commit to actually coming to the track, which we know the dirt track racers sometimes look at the weather report and go, oh, it's going to be better up here, so I'm going to go there. They're actually sort of forcing themselves to commit to the track early, and it's also helping promoters predict how big of an outpouring of support they're going to have for an event, so they can ramp up for having the right number of people there to handle an event. So if you're not using his service already, I definitely recommend it.
Thank you.
And you mentioned younger participants, and boy, it's almost like I bribed you there to mention that, because that's our next question for Jeff. Every time I go to the track, I'm seeing younger and younger racers, and I know it's just because I'm getting older and older, but that's a whole nother story. But younger participants, they're also going faster and faster nowadays. What do promoters need to worry about when it comes to younger racers, when it comes to their insurance coverage?
Well, first of all, probably the most important thing is seat time. It's the old Jeff Gordon effect that we used to call it for years when all this started coming about, because the motorsports policies used to state participant accident and liability policies would state 16 and or valid driver's license. Well, all these other classes started coming out to get the youth involved, and that's our future. So insurance companies had to change the wording on that and endorse policies for the younger participants to get involved. In doing that, we like to get, and speaking on our behalf, we like to get a resume. And we also like the promoter or owner of the track to have that child out some night, nobody else around, and you know what you're doing. Monitor, watch them, see how they're doing, make sure they know what they're doing. So many of these fathers get involved and they think their kid is going to go right straight to the top, right? And they want to get him in an advanced car. Maybe he's not ready yet. All this helps, manage risk, and that's the game at the end of the deal. But there is more and more minors, and that is our future, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So,
okay, at this point, I'm going to start encouraging you guys to think of your questions, and if you've got one, please raise your hand so I can jump over with the mic to you. But as I'm getting myself positioned, because I am old and slow, Darren, for you specifically, but please, Jeff, add your 2 cents afterwards, and Lori, I'm interested in hearing the legal side of this as well. How important is it to double check that you've got all of your events covered to avoid your gaps in coverage?
It can't be overstated. I'm going to take a little issue with my industry for a moment. We've had some court cases the last few years where they've been well publicized, and we won't mention any names, where coverage has been denied because an event wasn't on a schedule, whether that's been from a track or a team. It can't be overstated. You can't communicate to your insurance broker too much about what's going on at your facility, whether it's a track day, scheduled event, whatever. However, most of the policies that are written for tracks do have an audit provision in them. And the intent on that is to pick up events that weren't originally on the schedule or get an event canceled. But you can't overstate the importance of having the event. The reality is, if you're a race team, and you brought it up, you're in Indiana and you're scheduled to go race on a Saturday night in Ohio, and you look at the weather and it's terrible. And you say, well, I can go to Southern Illinois 100 miles, on a Saturday and race there. How are you supposed to communicate that to your insurance underwriter that instead of the event you told them in Ohio, you're going to be in Illinois? I don't know really in this day and age. Is an email to them saying you're doing it? The underwriter doesn't know. So you can't overstate the importance of that. But I think our industry needs to be a little more flexible from an insurance company standpoint to understand things change in this day and age. But you have to communicate to your insurance people everything you're going to be doing at the track. So they can't come back later and say, oh, we didn't know you were having that car show event or those fireworks that night. And Jeff and Lori, please chime in as well. I want your take.
Well, several good points there, Darren. Also, one thing to keep in mind is these events, whether you're with Darren or us or any other or whoever you're dealing with in insurance, try and make sure that so many. Well, let me back up here a little bit. So many of you get a local broker involved that may have your other business. I'm not slamming on them at all, but if you use a motorsports expert, they understand this. They understand how to help protect you, and they understand how to get this stuff reported to the underwriters to make sure that the coverage is in place. And that's just one aspect that I wanted to drive home here. Other than that, I agree with everything Darren said. He was spot on. So,
in my perspective and throughout my career, and being a general counsel at a major speedway, our insurance broker was top of my list, telephone numbers to call, and a partner. I talk to them all the time. If there's anything that happened on the track, it's on the grandstands, and I've been involved in some really horrific cases. But having that relationship with a motorsports expert, I agree. You need somebody that understands your business, knows what it's about, and can be a real partner. And communicating with them is topmost. One of the most horrific nights of my life, when bridges collapsed at a speedway and we had major accidents, one of the first calls I made, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, is to the insurance broker. I'm like, we need somebody out here now. And you got to have a partnership like that, and somebody that you can call and wake up in the middle of the night and have a real insurance partner. So having an expert is key.
Yes, there we go. David Vodden, Thunder Hill Raceway. Lori, we have a real opportunity here. Many race venues are on jurisdictional property, state or county or something like that. And you are working with an organization that is dealing with the county of Monterey. And what's going on there would be really valuable for us to know as a group, and the experiences that you're having with the county, the vision and the differences between the county and reality, and the county and the people who are vending or trying to get the lease there. So could you share with us what you think we would like to know, if we could, about that transaction?
I'll share as much as I can. If I tell you too much, I'll have to kill you. So this is a great, how many people here love Laguna Seca Raceway? I mean, it's a great facility, right? It's, 25 years ago, it used to be the showplace in California, and Sonoma Raceway was the dump, right? But now that's reversed. You get $100 million spent at Sonoma Raceway. It's beautiful, and Laguna Seca, unfortunately, is a dump, and it's just what happened. It's undercapitalized, which happens to speedways all the time, right? How many speedways across the country are undercapitalized and go out of business? It happens every day. in our industry. It happens all the time. So we have a great opportunity with a great group of folks. Friends of Laguna Seca is made up of 6 local business professionals. They're all racers. They love racing. They love Laguna Seca. The president of Friends of Laguna Seca, his farm backs up to the border, and since he's been 14 years old, he's been riding his bike through the trails. I mean, they just have a real passion for the raceway and what's there, and said, hey, we got $50 million. We want to invest it in the speedway. We want to rebuild it. So this is a great project. It's like having number one, you're Monterey, California. What better location can you have? Number 2, you've got a world-renowned speedway that's fantastic. The raceway itself is very competitive. It's a lot of history's happened there. And number 3, you've got a blank piece of paper. Let's rebuild it. Let's do whatever we want with the grandstand. So it's a great opportunity. Working with municipalities, if anybody's worked with the municipality, you know their pace is a little bit different than entrepreneurs in private business. It just is what it is. Their scope is different. They're not used to making decisions quickly. They're not used to making individual decisions. Everything's done by a committee with a board of supervisors. So that's the process that we find ourselves in now. We are negotiating with the board of supervisors with the county of Monterey. We have a proposal that we put forward to run the facility for 25 years, to invest $50 million over that 25 years and to rebuild the facility. So the negotiations are ongoing and progressing. And so we'll see in the next little bit whether the deal gets done or the county decides they want to choose another operator. But we're hopeful that we're kind of at the white flag stage with our negotiations, and hopeful to have a deal ready to announce and then take the reins of the facility and transition our team in there and then build it out for the future. So it's a great project. It's we're very, very hopeful that that things will get move forward, and that we'll be running that facility in the near future.
Hi, thank you. Frank Christian with NOLA Motorsports Park. Regarding the youth, so for those of us that have karting facilities as well as road courses, what are you seeing any change or understanding from the risk and the underwriters that, while karting does have some risk to it, it is really the entry level to racing. So I have that question. And then my second question is, are you seeing the use of tulip programs by tracks, where in the past tracks would allow folks to come in and run under their insurance for set fee, whereas now a tulip program allows us to put those groups in touch with our underwriters, and then they're able to get their own policy for their event?
Tulip, I love those policies. If your facility is renting out, if you're renting your facility quite a bit, which a lot of road courses obviously do, a tulip policy makes great sense. It's actually easier for the insurance company as well to get an idea of what's going on there, and to get an established rate, and it's an opportunity for the road course to know that coverage is in place, because if you send these folks out to get their own insurance policy, they're going to be subject to minimum premiums, which when they have to pay those minimum premiums might cost you a customer. So that's what my take is on the tulip. So as far as the go-karting, again, I think safety has come a long way. Again, I think when these kids get involved, it's trying to grow a passion, and it is the future. I think the carts are safer. As far as our company, you're always going to see claims from a participant accident standpoint, but from a liability standpoint, I can't recall any recently. Can you, Don, or anything? Or nothing. So that's my take on that.
On your minor question, no. Every state that I see with minors, waiver rules are different. And I don't know what your jurisdiction is, but we've seen cases where it's tough. You bring somebody there that's under the age of 18, they're 15, 16, 14, and dad's taking them to the track for a karting day. And in some states, having one parent sign the waiver with the child sufficient. In other states, it's not. So, and I'll defer to my attorney friend, but I think it's a moving target on enforceability. And or what if you send your kid with a neighbor and his parents, and they take your kid karting, and basically, I don't know if the waiver's valid because the adult parent's not there. So again, I think it's a moving target on liability.
And Lori, how different are the rules from state to state? If you've got a karting series that's visiting different tracks in different states, how tough is it to keep up with the different laws in the different states?
It's every state has their own rules. Laws are different in Indiana than they are in North Carolina. I know in North Carolina we've got very strong law with regard to racetracks and racing because there's so many. I would imagine Indianapolis is the same way. But the law is different in every 50 states, and you should know the law in your state. For instance, in Washington and Virginia, and I think Texas, waivers, it doesn't matter if you have a waiver. They're not enforceable in certain states. So it doesn't mean anything. And you should know the waiver is not a complete defense to any kind of accident. The waiver is one piece of evidence that you have in your defense against the accident to say, hey, this person assumed the risk of what they're getting into, and they release liability. It's just evidence that you have, and it helps your case. It's not a fail-safe. The best thing you can do is operate your speedway in a reasonably prudent manner, that a reasonable business person, have your insurance agent come out and do a full assessment of your risk. We used to do it once a year at the speedway. Have the insurance, they come out, they look at everything you've got, and then they give you a report and say, you know, you got a hole in your parking lot here, there's something wrong with your grandstands, there's something this. And the thing is, if you get that report, if you do nothing, that puts you at even more risk because now you know about those things and you intentionally just didn't do anything about it. If you get an assessment, be a responsible business person. Fix those issues that are out there, and then when the accidents happen, because they do, and the lawsuits come because they do, you've got, hey, I've got an assessment, we talked to our insurance agent, plus they sign the release, and the judge says, you know, it's dismissed, or you settle out of court. So just be a reasonable business person. That's the best thing you can do to keep yourself out of court.
Hello, my name is Eduardo Martinez. I'm from Mexico Speedway. We are a private road course. I have two questions. First is liability does apply. We need an insurance, but is there any insurance for the car? I mean, for insure the car first. And the second question is, does this insurance apply international? I mean, can we be assured in Mexico?
Thanks, Joe. Great question. For road courses in the United States, there is on-track physical damage coverage available. It is very limited. A few markets, usually all written out of London, for strictly road courses. For Mexico, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I'm sure probably somebody down there working with a London broker could do it. Yeah.
Insurance companies, you know, when dealing with a different country, you're dealing with different laws. So it's tough for an insurance company. The way policies are written, they're written for here in the United States. An example of this is SCORE, which is off-road racing. You know, lots of insurance companies will look at the risk here in the United States, but a lot of their events are in Mexico. Whole new set of laws and rules. So.
Danny Redkey, Eddie Sachs Racing. As a former promoter, and I apologize if I missed the answer to this. I was outside when you first started talking about waivers, but I cannot imagine an upside to electronic waivers. What am I missing in that, and the fact that they are so hard, like you just mentioned, it's just one little piece of anything, but how many things can go wrong with electronic waivers?
Upside is hopefully you've got the right system in place that's damn near permanent storage of it. We advocate the best systems I've seen capture a date and time of when it was signed and your face when you sign it. So it helps with identification purposes. Those what we're seeing is the upside. Does that answer your question? We're not saying they're perfect.
Go here, and then I'm going over there. So 1,
I think if the technology is the right technology is in place, it's a massive improvement over a paper waiver. But as Lori had said, it's one step in the process of defending yourself as a racing series or a facility. It's not a, hey, they signed a waiver, we're golden. It's one step of the process.
I think the answer is the data and it's the process. Again, your technology has to be right. Imagine a waiver system that's as simple as Uber. Push a button on your phone, you sign, the data's collected, and let's just make the assumption that the process is easy and the data's collected and it's stored. I think having that data and having access to it is a lot easier than trying to find that paper waiver that's crumpled up, and then you look at the signature like, did they sign that? Did they not sign it? And you still have the evidentiary proof. If you have, let's take for instance, you have a participant, somebody's in the pits and they get injured. A car hits them or whatever. And we're in a lawsuit situation, they filed a suit, they're trying to collect, you've got that paper waiver, that participant can just as easily say, that's not my signature. You have the same evidentiary problem as someone saying, well, I didn't push that button on the electronic data, but then in the electronic system, you can go back and you say, oh yeah, it was your phone, and here's your picture when you signed it, and you push this button that said, I agree. Your evidence is better. And I think electronically, as long as the systems are right, electronically is going to benefit everybody. Absolutely, because they're a minor and they can't waive their rights. You have the same problems with the paper waivers. You have the minor releases. It'll just be in electronic form. You have to have the parent sign, whether it's one or two parents, whatever the law is in that jurisdiction. You have the same system. It's just electronic rather than paper.
What if a parent shows up with two kids and says, they're both my kids, signs for both of them, one of them is not?
You can't prevent people from lying, and then that would come up in your case. Jeff can't waive rights for somebody else's kid, and you're going to have an issue with that case.
So we're going to have an issue as it relates to losing it, or we're going to have an issue as it relates to we can defend it a little bit if we got a guy that lied?
You can defend it, and facts win cases. So in that case, you've got a bad actor. This person lied about it, and it helps your case. Helps in the defense of the case.
In other situations, not that exact case, but it comes down to an effective system. If you've got an effective system and it's the same system over and over and over, then your insurance company is going to fight to protect you.
Yeah, I've been emailing all along during this. Our insurance agent for the company has never been to a racetrack. Never since 20 years.
You see my flyer?
Find a new one.
That's funny. Okay, thank you. Hello. Hi. Hi, this is Steve Tomaszewski with Talking Cars, Internet, TV, and Radio. My question is, how inundated have you been recently with the companies like Laps.com or Hooked on Driving approaching you? Is there a way to gauge that? Applying for permits where they, like Groupon, get people to pay $300 to be at that track, any track in America, to get on the track for a day. Second part of the question is, due to legislation, a lot of the tracks run privately or through a city or state. I'll use Road America as an example, not picking on them or anybody in a management, who are unable to sell land or land tracks for garage mahals. So the second part of the question is, we see garage mahals as the future at racetracks, and what have you seen from the inside, from the insurance side? Thank you.
The first answer to your question, I haven't seen that at all. On the garage mahal, I think you're more along the lines of the private road course country club. We continue to see them being developed. I just read about a project a week and a half ago in the Southwest, and it's interesting seeing the data from SEMA about 195,000 active race cars. I've got a lot of friends that own high-performance cars, and driving around 465 here in Indianapolis is not a lot of fun. And so they want to take them someplace, particularly a warmer climate in December. Why are we here? But yeah, I think there is that culture out there, and I think it's going to continue to develop, and we're going to see more and more of that. I've got a great friend in North Carolina that's looking to do one of those. Money's not the issue on development. It's finding the right place with the right regulations in place to acquire the land.
My question was, from a state or a city or an ordinance for these tracks run that way, does the insurance industry look to help them to coordinate to let them buy private parcels on that land for future development?
I don't think the insurance industry has any issue with it, personally. No.
I know in California, at Laguna Seca Raceway, the county owns the property, and then the operator of the facility would just be a management company that's operating the facility. Friends of Laguna Seca is, for that purpose, a nonprofit. There's no way to make a profit at that speedway because the county owns the land. And any improvements that you put on the land become the property of the county. So what good capitalists is say, yeah, I'm going to invest $2 million in building these new grandstands, and then the day one that they're built, they become property of the county. You have no balance sheet. So I think a trend is that maybe there's more nonprofits involved than for-profit, because it's hard making money on those municipal when you don't own the real estate, and you can't build your balance sheet. It's why a lot of speedways are undercapitalized.
Gene Cottingham, LST Marketing. Part of our business is managing large-scale events, IndyCar, IMSA, Global Rallycross, etc. We're also now managing a large amateur sporting facility. And Darren, you and I are talking about something called cyber liability right now. And I think part of it, we're hearing about electronic waivers. We're all handling more electronic information, housing it for a long period of time. When do we need to be looking at that on a more serious basis?
Great question, Gene. As soon as before you put the electronic waivers in place, you need to talk to your insurance broker about cyber liability, probably more important, what's called data breach. As Lori said, each state is different on waivers. Each state is different on data breach. If you're a business, no matter how big or how small, and you manage client data, name, address, phone number, social security number, date of birth, and you think somebody has breached your system, each state has different laws on notifying them. We worked with a very massive car dealership here a few years ago in the state of Indiana, and I said to the CFO, "What's your biggest fear?" And he said, "Darren, the whole corporate headquarters could burn down tonight. I could care less." All right? Walked me over to their computer server room and said, "If somebody breaches this, we have 100,000 individual records in there of people. Name, date of birth, social security number. If somebody breaches that, we're in trouble." So right away. In Indiana, you have to notify them in the cost. And there's companies out there that do that. If you've ever been breached, whether your Target card or et cetera, you get something in the mail saying your identity may have been compromised. The average cost is $2 per person to notify that. So if you have 100,000 records, do the math. That's a lot of money. And I don't know a speedway racetrack facility in North America that has that in their budget. We're going to set $200,000 aside to notify our friends of a breach. So, as Jeff had said, it's cheap. Buy the coverage. Please.
That's a good question. Cyber liability is a big deal. And credit card numbers. If you're storing credit card numbers, you got to be super careful with that information. Pardon me?
HIPAA.
Yeah.
Mitch Wright, NCM Motorsports Park. Getting back to waivers a little bit, there seems to be at least a gray area in my mind on, first of all, minor waivers, paper waivers. And, we have a lot of organizations that come to our circuit that have underage participants that obviously we try to catch them as they come through the gate and get a minor waiver. So we have one on file, but I'm confident we don't catch them all, whether it be a driver's school and or a race or track day series. The second question is, how long do we need to keep those waivers, the paper waivers that we currently have?
It varies by to the. There's two things. I think Jeff said before. It's your process. If you've got a process where you are in good faith, trying to catch everybody and all the minors and make sure that both their parents sign the waiver, and whatever the rules in your jurisdiction, I think your process is going to be your best defense. That you may not catch everybody, but you have a process that you follow. Yeah.
One more question on that. Should we, I think we've been pretty diligent, but should we really go after the organizer and saying, I need copies of all of your minor waivers?
You could. I think a better solution would be in your contract with that vendor that they agree to indemnify. Number one, it's a contractual commitment that they commit to you contractually that they're going to collect all those waivers, and then they agree to indemnify you if you get sued in a lawsuit and they did not get the waiver. They agree to indemnify you for that. That's how to solve for that. On the second question on how long do you keep it, it's whatever your statute of limitations is. In North Carolina, it's 3 years. I think it's 3 years just about everywhere. But however that potential to get sued, that's how long you need to keep the waivers.
And it's important because we've seen cases come in, I mean, right down to the wire on the statute. So,
Bill Tiber from Atessa in Arizona. Speaking about liability and particularly with motorhomes, we've seen how at one time you could walk into a track carrying an ice chest full of beer. Now you go to a gate, somebody checks your purse, checks your backpack, make sure you're not taking anything back. What is the boundary as far as if somebody comes in with a motorhome and they're going to come into your track and you don't know what they have inside that motorhome? What's our liability? How far do we have to go to ensure A, safety, and B, low risk?
They were going to arm wrestle it for it. Yeah.
I'm looking around here from friends from certain racing organizations. I don't want to piss anybody off. I have rode in motorhomes into arguably the two largest racing facilities on this part of North America. I've never seen one stopped and searched, ever. That's right. Ever, which is surprising given, you can't walk in with a six-pack cooler without somebody going through it. But we're going to drive a 50-foot, $2 million Newell through the front gate. Wave them in. Come on in. No problem. Should they be checked? Absolutely. But it gets back to reality. If you've got a track, somebody has usually paid, outside of the participants, somebody has paid a significant amount of money to park their motorhome on your facility for that weekend, week, etc. You usually have a line of them backed up waiting to get in. And you're going to say, we're going to search it? You'd have to have them there a week early, right? But the reality is, if something were to happen, are you liable? Probably. I mean, that's reality, right? What's that? Leave that to the jury. To your question, the law is going to look at what's reasonable in the circumstances, right? What's reasonable? And then they're going to look at what the people in the industry do. So if nobody's searching campers and that's our industry standard, then the law is going to say you just have to do what's reasonable in your circumstances, no matter what. So I think we all have to accept the fact at super speedways, you can't search everybody. And if something's going to happen, something's going to happen. And we have to be reasonable in our processes and procedures. You also have to make sure you have a good customer experience. So there's a balance. But if you're reasonable and you're following industry standard, you look at what's happened to wheel fences at speedways recently, right? We had a lot of bad accidents. We had cars going in the grandstand. You have wheel fence breaches. You have the industry saying, hey, we need to shore up our wheel fence. Well, now there's a new standard. It's 21 feet rather than 17 feet. It's a curved top rather than, and you have different foundations. We're all reasonable people, and you don't want people getting injured. And I think if you do what's reasonable in the circumstances and what your peers are doing, that's the best defense you can have. And the reality is, God forbid it ever happens, but if it does, the industry standard will change overnight.
The only thing I'd say about the industry standard, it was the industry standard not to check anybody up to about, you could walk through it and
or bottles.
Yeah, yeah. Now you can't go into the track without being wanted. So the question is, times have changed. And I don't know if it's a problem. I mean, it's a real problem for all of us that have got motorhome facilities on these tracks. You could bring such a huge mess into the place, it's unbelievable. Maybe what we have to do is look at pre-check like an airline does for anybody that registers a motorhome.
It's not a bad idea.
Okay, we're up against time, so if you guys do have any additional questions, please contact them via email. And again, Tim does a great job of sharing those answers, not just with the person answering. So make sure that you send the answers to us as well, so we can include that out to the whole class as a whole. Before we head to break here, Jeff, just one quick question for you: length of term. We're seeing injuries in this sport now with racers that are exceeding that usual 1 year length of term. Is there anything we can do about that?
Actually, there is now. Motorsports policies are written, participant accident policies are written with a 1 year benefit window. Typically, it's not an issue, but I've learned this recently. It can become an issue when you deal with associations. Several associations have memberships, and they sell these memberships, and as part of a benefit to the membership comes higher limit medical. Lots of times, if a participant gets injured at the facility, its first check is going to be, do they have primary insurance of any kind? That takes a little time to go through that process. The second step, then, is the track's insurance and what the track has in place. That takes time to go through that process. And then the third step is the association and what they have in place. And by the time you get to that, you're usually months down the road, which means the benefit window is very small. What we're going to do going forward with associations that we do business with, we're going to talk about a 2 and 3 year benefit window and getting those policies endorsed to show that. And you know, there was a high-profile case of a driver that got hurt in Iowa, and you know, everybody feels bad for him, and that was the situation. I mean, everybody did what they were supposed to do, and the association buys a tremendous amount of insurance for these guys to take care of their member. But it got to that point, and the benefit window was shrinking. We were fortunate to have a great relationship with our underwriting partners, and they made an exception in this case to continue to pay the bills. So.
And Lori, finally, our last question. Any recent case law that impacts the racing world that we should be aware of?
Trick question. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we'll have you research that and maybe get back to us. I want to thank our panel. Very insightful, and we can kick that risk and be a little safer in how we do things next year. And that was my way of saying that the morning break is sponsored by Sports Insurance Specialists, so thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
What did we learn? We learned to incorporate your business, even if it's just a small amateur race team. Recently heard about a businessman who went out and ran some 24 Hours of Lemons races and didn't have that amateur team incorporated and ran into some issues. So incorporate, protect yourself. When it comes to insurance, keep your insurance agent in the loop and get a regular checkup and manage your data as a track. Plan ahead for that worst case because it often comes true.